It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He's Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we christen a Wednesday.
You're a moron.
Let it sail.
You're a moron.
Am I a moron or an idiot?
You're a sack of...
Did I hear somebody scream both?
Stuff your sorries in a sack, mister.
Yeah. What do you say? Dumber than a sack of bricks? We're talking about the back and forth between Navarro and Elon Musk. The throwdown happened on Tuesday morning. I mean, he went double down, Elon Musk did, against Peter Navarro. And so now, we're in this awkward moment. But I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from Elon Musk and, how he's been. If you think about the connection of Doge, trade, and everything else, if you're looking at improving basically the odds of an economy, but a government running more efficiently, you talk about expanding an economy, right? Greater revenue stream when you do that, for those who care about that, but also expanding the wealth of individuals and giving people more freedom, which is something that Elon Musk has talked about time and time again here in recent years, especially.
I sensed yesterday was the first day that I saw more negative, and again, this is anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
But it was the first day that I saw more negative comments, and the narrative was not attacking Trump, but attacking the people like Navarro and I got mine blank. The other guy's name, not Bessert. I know who you're talking about. Hold on a second. I don't know why I went blank too. I was reading something else from Jim Cramer. Sorry, something just came across my screen. I thought it was breaking news. Sorry about that. Well, what was it?
Nah, it was the markets.
Lutnick.
Markets.
Lutnick.
Yeah. Lutnick. The markets can't keep up with President Trump, and I thought it was something and it was from 7 hours ago. It looked like it was breaking news. I thought, what are you talking about? We're in overnights.
Yeah. So. That's what I saw. I saw that yesterday, and the fact is, we were talking during our pre-show meeting, and Navarro's getting raked over the coals by a lot of conservatives now. Republicans are worried where this is going. You saw yesterday. I mean, I had a chuckle yesterday when by the time I woke up and looked at the news, and the first thing I saw was all the, as I call them, Bubba Gumper Trumpers. These are the ones that don't seem to know economics at all and just going, see, it's all working because the stock market's up. See, the stock market's up. The stock market's up. Everything's great. See, everybody loves us. Everybody loves us. Then after the drop of 1,300 points in a couple of hours to end the day, everybody's quiet. And it's like they have no idea. They have no experience. Apparently, when you have followed the stock market for a half a century and you understand what goes on with day traders and trying to make a quick profit or not, and the hope, as we said yesterday, the hope for optimism, you knew exactly what was going on, and you knew that the market is so volatile right now that it will skyrocket 1,000 points here or there based on just anything that is said. What I found interesting, though, is when the stock market, it got up to 1,000 points, right?
I think it got. I'll have to look at the intraday.
I was looking at
trading, but I think it got up pretty close. To
yeah,
that.
I was looking at a crawl, and it was like right at 1,000 up, and it ended up down 241.
Down 320 on the Dow.
Oh, 320 on the Dow yesterday.
Yeah.
By the way, the right now in the futures, down almost 800.
Yeah.
And We had said it yesterday. We said, the markets are looking good. Our advice to the administration is don't talk till after 4 o'clock tomorrow. Well, they did.
And, of course, they were going to.
And when they speak on this, it just goes, woo, right down the other way. You and I mean, it was just, I shake my head at the lack of, the lack of any type of consistent message coming from the administration. They're all over the place on this. They don't know where. I'm telling you right now, they don't know where the hell to go.
Well,
let me just finish here on the eggs, because you and I talked about this. They've been touting. See, eggs prices going down. Eggs prices going down. Eggs prices going down. Finally, the media discovered yesterday, and the administration had to admit, oh, okay, well, egg prices are coming down because they're importing them from Europe, and the press was asking the question, if you're importing them from Europe and you're putting a huge tariff on it, aren't egg prices going to go up?
I said that 6 days ago.
Yeah, but the entire thing.
On the air.
Oh, I know. We both did. And it was just like we shook our head.
I was watching that press conference, and he says that, he says, we're doing a great job on bringing prices down, just as he's about to announce a tariff against the entire effort of bringing those prices down.
But they weren't saying the reason they were going down.
No.
The administration they were just saying the eggs are going down, and we knew at the time, we said, well, they're going down because they're massively importing the eggs, which is exactly what they claim they don't want to do. So yesterday, really, and I think maybe it was the Elon Musk attack on Navarro. By the way, remember about a month ago when I said Navarro is a complete idiot? And I was blasted, and now Elon Musk, he's a moron. He called him all sorts of names yesterday.
Well, and the thing is you can't say that about Navarro without saying Trump is wrong on trade. Elon Musk can't say that about Navarro without actually pointing out that the president is wrong on trade. And so that's his position, which is clear to anybody who's paying attention.
Well, you made the point. He didn't bring back Navarro for information. He brought Navarro back for affirmation.
Yeah, that's the entire reason of bringing him back. If you look at the whole trade deficit, trade imbalance thing, this is something that Donald Trump has been talking about for decades. This is a long-held belief. And he believes there's something to that. By the way, you saw the guy that did the formula that they quoted and putting all this together, saying they've got it completely wrong. I don't even know where they got some of these numbers from, but they quoted my work. He was one of the guys, and putting up the formula of basically what the trade cost between nations is, right? Mm-hmm. But he said they've got it completely wrong. New York Post had that story yesterday morning. I'm like, well, I mean, we already know that. Everybody's already shredded that. And when you look at this whole thing, again, with Elon Musk, it means he stands completely against tariffs. I mean, he wants, and he's talked about it. He hasn't been trying to hide his opinion at all. It's quite the opposite. And Navarro, wanted to go after him. He's just a car assembler. He's not even a car maker. All right. And it's all of those, back and forth spell out one thing. But here's the thing, too. Elon Musk isn't the only mega donor billionaire that right now is greatly concerned and is being vocal about it. More and more of them are coming out of the woodwork, saying we can't sustain this. What the market was, with everybody yesterday, anybody who was saying, see, it shows it's working when we were in positive territory, isn't paying attention to what's going on.
No.
You clearly want to put your blinders on if you're saying that. Because what the market was saying, well, first of all, there's something called a bear market bounce. You're going to get a few of those bounces on the way down. That's going to happen. Nobody knows where it ends. It depends on what the policy is going to be. There's only one type of sentiment that can be a main driver for a market downside like this or an upside, and that's government policy. U.S. government policy especially, but when it comes to global trade, this is massive. And what the markets were hoping for, we said this about this time yesterday, about 24 hours ago. What the markets were, what you saw when you were looking at positive territory yesterday was the markets, aside from the bounce, was the markets saying, we're hoping there's a deal. We're hoping they're talking like there might be a deal. They're talking like there might be a deal. They're talking like and next thing you know, 104% tariffs on China. And I was saying, wait for it, because once the gauntlet comes down on China, and it finally came later in the day, well, that's only China's going to play this game as long as they can possibly play it. Xi said it, I don't know, it was about a month ago. We'll get into a trade war. He actually said something to the effect of, or any other kind of war. And the markets weren't shaken by that comment. And I was like, whoa. They'll stay this game, China will, for a lot longer than any other nations because they don't worry about things like political pressure. There will be pressure on them. There will be some things that at some point need to change, but that's not going to be anytime soon.
What scared most, I think, economists yesterday was the fact that, remember, the whole thing was, well, okay, we're getting down the 10-year Treasury bill down to 3.9-something%. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
It's now almost gone up 0.5% here in a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
And it's now the worry yesterday is China dumping our Treasury bills,
right,
which will skyrocket the Treasury bills, which will skyrocket the budget and the interest that has to be paid on it. And I saw Peter Schiff saying Peter Schiff yesterday, we could be in a full financial nightmare come fall if this continues. And when you had, I think yesterday, when especially during Levitt's press conference, when they were talking about the fact that this could take months upon months upon months. Well, they're just saying they want a deal. By the time you get a deal, it could be months upon months upon months. It could be years before you get a deal. And, with any of these countries, especially when you're talking about doing something that's impossible, which is you're not going to be able to even trade. Israel, we said, Israel, you can do it, because Israel's like, sure, we'll even trade. Sell us $7.4 billion in more weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Do it as part of a trade deal. We'll do that. We want more weapons. Give it to us. I mean, they may be able to solve that with Israel. I don't know how you do it with anybody else. And Navarro out there. And now this is a war inside the administration now. You're talking Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk has more clout to Trump supporters than Peter Navarro does.
Oh, yeah.
And once you connect Peter Navarro, that Trump believes exactly, because Trump has behaved exactly how Peter Navarro wants him to behave. You're seeing, I saw yesterday, what I saw was the beginnings of the cracks of Republicans yesterday on this.
Yeah.
And they're not going to blame the president, so they got to blame Navarro.
Well, I think I said Sunday night, I think I said something to the effect of, well, this week, we'll see which direction, how things are going to go, because we only have so long. There are only so many days you can afford to go in this down direction on Wall Street without something coming back at you politically. And there being more and more heat along the way. That's why you have so many of these high-profile mega donor billionaires. More and more of them are speaking out. The CEOs of companies. Ackman had to walk his thing back on Lutnick. But again, it gets back to, and then everybody was going after him. All the ever Trumpers, as you call them. We're going after Ackman, saying, well, he's just mad because his company's losing money. I saw some of them doing that against Elon Musk yesterday. He's only mad because his stock price keeps falling further and further. And I thought, okay, I guess we're going down this road. One day Elon Musk is good, and the next day he's bad and he's out. This is the reality, the political reality that we're in. And the very reality that most people stay away from this fray, that this back and forth doesn't mean anything to them. They don't even pay attention to it. Their reality is the price of eggs. That's their reality. They have to pay for it. And they're wondering when prices are going to come down. And if they keep going up, that's going to be it. The border thing won't matter as much, even though it was a huge accomplishment for this administration. Massive, massive accomplishment in record time. Won't mean a thing if people can't afford anything.
Most people's egg prices have gone down. I've been paying attention. In my supermarket, they haven't. Mm-hmm. They've stayed steady the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So, but it's the fact that how they're claiming egg prices have gone down, and maybe they have in some areas. But if they have, the reason they have is because we're importing massive amounts of eggs, which is exactly what the administration claims they don't want to do.
Right.
Just doesn't make it. Yeah. The messaging. Sorry, the messaging sucks right now.
Yeah.
People
are going to be looking at that receipt. That's all they're going to pay attention to. They're going to pay attention to the price of things. They're wanting those prices to come down. That's why they elected him in part. The border thing is solved, but it won't matter.
866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Cold weather takes a toll on trucks. As warmer weather rolls in, it's time to assess the impact winter has had on your vehicle before you find yourself stranded roadside this spring. Begin your spring maintenance routine by inspecting your brake system and listen closely for any air leaks. During winter, water and moisture that builds up in your air brake system almost always freezes and turns to ice, which can damage your air valves, air dryers, and other essential components. Check and drain your air tanks to help keep water, contaminants, and corrosion at bay. Also, check your slack adjusters for proper stroke and lubrication. And check your brake lining or pads to ensure proper thickness.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning, as always. Wow, what a week it's been, huh? By the way, we figured out the proxy voting. What they the whole thing of the solution that they came to, which was vote pairing. Okay. So what they're going to do is if there's somebody out who is pregnant who's going to vote yes on an issue, they find another Republican who's going to vote no, and neither of them vote. They cancel out each other's vote.
Okay. What if they don't find another one?
Well, the problem is that's 2 votes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have a 30-vote margin in the House.
No.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, so, Republican math, that's the problem.
To
right?
me, it was both sides looking for a way out.
Yeah.
Where they could
because it sounds like a cop out.
Right,
yeah.
where they could claim victory.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. It sounds like that is such a GOP answer or solution to a problem. Right there. Well, we'll just have vote pairing. That sounds, because we don't like messy. That's what it sounds like. You know? It just sounds like a John Boehner approach. Yeah. Good job. Good job, GOP.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Just to explain to everybody the math error that everybody was talking about yesterday, which really got to the point of saying you need to start firing some people if you're doing this, and from Republicans. And these are Republicans that I've been following that initially were in favor of what Trump is doing and now moving in the opposite direction. The conservative think tank says the error that led to tariff rates. Let me just get this here right. A formula used by the Trump administration to levy reciprocal tariffs contains a serious math error that way overinflates the impact by a factor of 4, economists at the American Enterprise Institute said. After announcing the tariffs last Wednesday, the Trump administration released a complicated-looking formula, which it said was developed with the Council of Economic Advisors used to determine how to set rates. It turns out that the formula is simply the U.S. trade deficit with each country divided by the value of goods the U.S. imports from that country. Two other variables in the equation cancel each other out, rendering them effectively meaningless. American Enterprise Institute economists Kevin Corinth and Stan Vuger say they shouldn't cancel each other out because the Trump team used the wrong level data for one of them.
Yeah.
One of the variables relates to the elasticity of import prices with respect to tariffs, which is to say how much import prices move as tariffs are applied. The administration's calculation assigned a value of 0.25 to that variable, which in the math of price elasticity suggests most of the tariff impact does not hit the import price as an item as it enters the country. But the AIE paper says that they used the wrong value for import prices and instead used a value for a retail price, or what happens to the final consumer price after the good is imported and distributed. They argue instead the right value was 0.945. In other words, almost all the tariff hits the import price of a good as it's brought into the country. It is inconsistent to multiply the elasticity of import demand with respect to import prices by the elasticity of retail prices with respect to tariffs. And I know I'm losing you now. I'm losing me now as we go on with that. They said, for example, they point out that if the tariffs have been calculated correctly with the same ultimate goal in mind, but using the right figures, the levy on a country like Vietnam would have been 12% and not 46%. And so they were blasted for the algebra error yesterday, if you saw that one.
Yeah.
They don't have their algebra right.
Brent Neiman, he's a University of Chicago economics professor, said in a New York Times op-ed and that the president's sweeping tariff regime should have roughly been 4 times less if Neiman's study had been followed correctly. In fact, it was his study at the White House used for the formula. He says they got it very wrong, grossly miscalculated the levies for each country. And he was asking, in fact, how on earth did it calculate such high rates? And, it's, again, making the same point here, that it was multiplied and none of the numbers made sense. And he was kind of shocked the fact that they were using his research, Brent Neiman's research, and got it completely wrong. Now, my question, when I saw this yesterday morning, my question was, all right, but does it go anywhere? Is anybody going to listen to that? Because you applied the formula wrong. If you applied the formula wrong, then what's the justification from Navarro and Lutnick? I mean, I'm sure they'll come up with something. They'll counter and say, well, what the research didn't account for is blah, blah. But if you cite the research and the actual author of that research, the researcher himself says you did it wrong, then where do you go?
You know, you had, in fact, you have conservatives saying, and look, we've said this before, tell the truth. Democrats have to lie. President could have told the truth on this. And, you know, when it comes to reciprocal tariffs on people that have unfair tariffs on us, whatever.
Yeah.
But as we have said, and I went through this again with my buddies yesterday on it, where they said you need to trust Trump. And I said, why? I said, look at the Canadian Free Trade Agreement that was made. Let's look at USMCA. You know, Trump negotiated that solely. Remember when that thing came out that showed eggs 238%, you know, just all the different tariffs and everything else? Mm-hmm. Trump negotiated every one of those. He and only he did it. And I said, so either he's completely clueless. He was completely clueless when it came to NAFTA, or he's lying to you. One or the other. Well, the fact is he did it, and then I believe regretted it. One of the reasons that, you know, because Navarro didn't get what he wanted. And you and I agreed with what Trump did with USMCA.
Because it didn't move much.
It didn't move much. I mean, they updated it for things, you know, technological things and whatever, and they did increase the cost of auto parts that were made in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. We talked about that portion of it that he bragged about, that he's saving jobs. It's like, well, actually, the one thing you're bragging about is what's going to increase auto prices, but not a lot. But that was really it in it. But everything else he negotiated. And then he went after Canada. He went after Canada, which was totally uncalled for, as if Canada's putting these tariffs on us because he's the one. They're the ones that presented that number. Remember that? Mm-hmm. They presented that number of 200 and something tariffs. Well, you negotiated it. And then you came out and attacked Canada as if Canada created these things in a vacuum that was somehow outside USMCA, and it was all part of USMCA. So to try to save face, when he initially passed it, he told, you know, the always Trumpers, oh, NAFTA's gone and we did this, and they all bought it. Mm-hmm. And we said, fine, if they all buy it, nothing we can do, but it's not a bad plan, but everybody bought it. And so what he do a couple of years later comes out and lies by omission, by not telling the truth about where all those tariffs that you had to reach a certain level to get to, which they never have. He didn't explain that either. Mm-hmm. He just said these are the tariffs that are out there. So our point has always been Democrats have to lie. They have to lie. They cannot sell the American people. They cannot sell to the American people what they believe. Trump could have sold all of this to the American people from those that actually have unfair trade practices with us.
He could have, in fact, coming in, and we said this early on, he could have said, look, I'm not happy with the results of USMCA and the way it turned out. We didn't go far enough. We're going back to the table. That right there could have been your approach.
Right.
You know, we didn't get it done. It was a great deal, wasn't great enough. We're going to go in and this time we're going to get everything we want. If you wanted to take it from that approach, you could have.
Right. And my point is Republicans don't have to lie. Stop lying.
Right.
Unless you're saying, well, we have to because our goal was never reciprocal tariffs.
Well, because
our goal was to come up with this insane theory that we can get every country to have where the United States has a trade surplus, or it's even with every single country. That is impossible. It can't happen. So maybe if you're attempting to sell something that's impossible, you've got to lie about it initially to get to that point.
Yeah, and again, what are you going to use to justify that imbalance? What constitutes that imbalance in trade? Because now the researchers whose work they use to do the formula are saying, you applied that all wrong. Everybody's taken these numbers and gone through them and said, this isn't true. Well, yet they keep saying it.
Couple of examples, and this is where Lutnick got blasted the other day by people that start saying, stop lying about this stuff. You know, the president came out yesterday wasn't a good move when he said, we're going to put a tariff on all pharmaceuticals coming into the country.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a great message to be selling to people right now.
Right.
And you had Lutnick promoting it over the weekend, arguing on Face the Nation, said, we don't make any medicine in this country anymore. It's completely false.
It's not true.
Completely false. When it comes to active pharmaceutical ingredients in the United States, and that's what pharmaceuticals are listed under, the U.S. makes a bit more than half of all consumed by American patients. In 2021, 53% of the pharmaceuticals used in U.S. Consumed medicines were produced in the United States. More than 85% were produced either in the United States, 53%, or Europe, 33%. China produced only 7%. As of 2023, the U.S. has 1,580 pharmaceutical production facilities. The U.S. produces 22% of all medicines produced in the world. And so National Review went through and did all the research on it for pharmaceuticals. And he said, we don't make medicine. Well, of course, but you're selling something that's false. Why are you doing that? If you want to say we need to produce more here in this country, well, then attempt to sell that.
Right.
Then he went on the shipyards. We don't make ships. Well, that's not true. The United States has 154 private shipyards categorized as active building, which are scattered across 29 states and the U.S. Virgin Island. Additionally, there are over 300 shipyards which engage in ship repairs and are capable of constructing ships, but are not actively engaged in shipbuilding activity. And they said American shipbuilding is already protected by the Jones Act, which requires ships carrying freight between U.S. ports must be built, owned, and crewed by Americans and must be flagged in the U.S. as well. Few ships meet those requirements. In the case of the LNG tankers, 0 ships meet those requirements. So American consumers, because of the Jones Act, pay a higher price for a variety of different goods. They found out that if the Jones Act did not exist, U.S. gasoline would replace 36% of imports. You hear that? Mm-hmm. U.S. gasoline would replace 36% of imports, and average prices of gasoline would decrease by 63 cents per barrel. Imports of jet fuel and diesel would essentially disappear entirely. And they go through everything with, he said, Lutnick continued, we don't have enough steel and aluminum to fight a battle, right? And then they point out, because it's something that you and I pointed out before, the steel tariffs announced earlier this year are just one of the more easily justifiable moves the administration has made because China built up its steel production industry to fuel a housing boom, and then the housing bubble burst. So now China is selling steel anywhere and everywhere it can at below the cost of production in order to avoid having to be shut down about 30% of its steel industry. With that in mind, back in 2018, when Trump administration enacted the new tariffs on steel, industries adjusted by using less steel in their products. From 2012 to 2017, the U.S. economy used an average of 100 million tons of steel and 5.23 million tons of aluminum per year. In the 2023 U.S. economy, although 10% bigger in constant inflation-adjusted dollars, used only 93 million tons of steel and 4 million tons of aluminum, respectively 7% less and 20% less than before. You look, it's all about economics. We said early on, I go, well, whatever's going to happen is going to happen because economics always wins. You can't beat economics. You can manipulate an economy, but you can't change economics.
Market's going to respond, to everything. The biggest driver, the one big driver is U.S. policy. This kind of U.S. policy, which is essentially U.S. versus the world, global trade policy by the U.S., in such a big way, is a massive global economic driver, and we're seeing that play out right now.
Somebody made the point yesterday. They're saying, well, we want the good jobs here to increase the wages. He goes, a price increase is the same thing as a decrease in salary.
Yeah.
They're both the same thing.
You might make more, but you're going to be paying more for everything.
It's the same thing.
Right.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Friday Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Some court decisions yesterday. We will get to that. Also, the federal government spent an eye-popping amount of money on furniture while many work remotely.
No.
that also was brought up. Did you see where Apple, a report that Apple apparently flew in 5 plane loads of iPhones from China?
Yeah, trying to get them in under
beat the tariffs.
under the gun, right? Yeah.
We'll get to that and a whole bunch more on the way.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. By the way, it should be noted, because I saw it all over social media the last couple of days.
Yeah.
The just so people understand, the dire wolf is still extinct.
Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't taken the DNA of a dire wolf and made it come back. And I was reading here from Tech and Science National Review, Wesley Smith. The media are such suckers for hyperbolic biotech stories. Colossal laboratories in bioscience made headlines for supposedly having genetically engineered a return of dire wolves that disappeared around 12,500 years ago, which many stories claim to now be de-extinct after 3 gene-edited pups were born. And no, the company actually engineered gray wolves to have white fur. And if it works, a larger stature. But despite a similar appearance, gray wolves are not actually close relatives of the extinct species. Gray wolves and the dire wolves were thought to be very closely related based on their physical similarities, but a 2021 study of ancient DNA revealed that they last shared a common ancestor around 6 million years ago. Jackals, African wild dogs, all more closely related to gray wolves than dire wolves are, despite their similar appearance. Beth Shapiro of Colosso says her team has sequenced the complete genome of the dire wolf and will soon release it to the public. Shapiro could not tell New Scientist how many differences there are, but said the two species share 99.5% of their DNA. Since a gray wolf genome is around 2.4 billion base pairs long, it still leaves room for millions of base pairs of differences. The company made just 20 gene edits, with 5 of those having to do with fur color. That's still a gray wolf any way you look at it. So there you go.
And this is hasn't been widely reported, but my sources tell me that they also in the DNA strand were missing one element, and they patched that DNA strand with some DNA from a fainting goat. So these wolves, when you clap, just fall over.
Yeah.
It's this whole Game of Thrones thing, by the way. That's the whole driver on this. People saw these white wolves in the Game of Thrones, and now everybody's getting excited. You're changing, you know what this is? It's a Labradoodle. Full stop. People wanted to see a white wolf? Here, we'll make one. That's all that was.
And the company was careful to acknowledge that the dire wolf is not actually back, but that the pups are functional equivalents. There's a big difference between functional equivalence.
Functional equivalent. What?
Shapiro said people should understand an important detail of the project. It is impossible for the DNA of these new cells to be 100% identical to their prehistoric ancestors. There's probably millions of differences between gray wolves and dire wolves, and the DNA editing technology is not sufficiently robust that we can make all those changes simultaneously without causing the cell to melt down. Until we can synthesize the whole genome from scratch, we can't make anything that's 100% genetically identical. So there you go.
Yeah.
So but when I saw that, I went, they really did that? Because those were the headlines.
Right.
But it's not true. I tell you, we live in, you and I said this a long time ago, that the biggest challenge we have in this country is not only politicians lying, but people wanting to make up their own lies. It's politicians lying, people enabling the lying, and then people just in general lying for whatever.
Or what your dad said, people wanting to be BS'd.
People wanting to be BS'd, yes. My dad said that long.
People want to believe that the dire wolf came back because they were big fans of Game of Thrones, and they want to see a white wolf.
Yeah.
The company was very clear.
Didn't matter.
It really is. It really is another version of the Labradoodle. Okay, well, you want something that looks like that? Okay, we can do that. We'll just do this. We'll extract some DNA. 99.9% of the DNA strand is gray wolf. But, hey, it's white. Looks cool. It's, I don't know. I don't know why people get caught up in it. I really don't.
Yeah, because let's be honest. I might say, look, these people just don't have any lives, but I don't have a life, and I don't do this.
Right.
You didn't have to agree so quickly.
Well, when you're right, you're right.
You could have hesitated a little bit and go, come on.
When you're right, you're right.
You got a little bit of a life. I did go to the driving range yesterday.
Did you?
I am playing, yes, I'm playing in the Independent Bob golf tournament this weekend.
All right.
It's actually, Bob plays in it, but it's actually for his brother Tom, who you know, and it's for his late son. So they have a Make-A-Wish tournament every year. And you met Bob's brother before, right?
I did.
Tom.
I did.
Good guy.
Yeah, out in San Diego.
Great guy. I love, these are some of the greatest people, and we have a party Friday night, and then Saturday's the golf tournament. And it's just so much fun.
Well, maybe some scientists in the lab could engineer a good golf game for you or something.
Well,
they brought back the dire wolf. They can do anything.
I would not be the genetic equivalent of a good golfer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the genetic equivalent, but what did they use? What was the term that they used? But an adequate substitute or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, that's the thing. It's like a tribute band.
It's like going to see, I saw the other day, Molly, I think I talked about this, Molly Hatchet, Leonard Skinner, and the Outlaws are playing.
Yeah. Right.
Molly Hatchet, 0 original members.
Right.
Leonard Skinner, 0 original members. The Outlaws, 1 original member.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm like,
I
burst out laughing.
It's the only band that could ever get away with that is Gwar.
A lot of people may not know who the band is. If you do, automatically you'll laugh.
Just Google GWAR, Gwar. Just Google and look at the pictures. You'll see.
Sorry, I spent about 30 seconds one time trying to like them.
Well, it's kind of a freak show, which is the whole point. But it could go. I think one of them said in an interview, "Yeah, this could go on forever."
Or I saw, where did I see? I saw Gene Simmons on, what's his name? The guy from Smashing Pumpkins, his podcast.
Yeah.
And they talked about the virtual AI kiss show. Will it go on forever? And should it?
Oh, did you? Yeah. Did you see that? I mean, I saw a story on it a while back, and they did that. It's kind of this, I don't know. Didn't we go through that with these computer animated versions of whatever artist?
Yeah.
You know? We don't need to bring everybody back from the dead. First of all 4 original members of KISS are still alive. Number 2, is there really a demand for that? Or would you like to just see the band again?
Well, you saw they're going to play again. They just going to take off the makeup and everything.
Yeah. Right.
Who wants to see that?
Well, that's no. Put it back on.
But no, I guess I got the terminology. If I got a genetic makeover, I would be the functional equivalent of a good golfer.
Yeah. There you go.
Hey, I went to the driving range yesterday. I spent an hour out there doing a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to work out tomorrow. Then hit the driving range Thursday and Friday. I really haven't played in ages, and so it'll be but it's a best ball, so it's not a regular golf tournament. I just got to focus on shots. But the best part was, I went to the driving range for an hour. Nothing hurts.
Oh, good.
I am the functional equivalent of a 64-year-old.
Yeah. Like that lady one time told me, wow, seriously, I can't believe you have grandchildren. You don't look a day over 62. I said, I'm 58.
I love
I
that.
still took that as a compliment because I think I look much older than 62. Yeah.
All right. Well, coming up here, we'll hear from Speaker Mike Johnson. Okay. Wall Street Journal also had an editorial on it saying, look, you don't have to have the cuts in this bill. This is a framework. You do that with the official reconciliation bill. This gets you to it. All right. Good. We'll wait.
All right.
Okay. We'll see.
Yeah. We're on the road to developing the framework.
Yes.
Okay.
Of cuts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. Sure we are. Yeah. We're going to get there one of these days. Okay.
Plus all the different court rulings. Maine sues the Trump administration for the funding freeze as the state lets trans athletes on female sports teams. Boy.
Yeah.
You know, this is one of the things that we talk about. This is our concern. My only concern is with all of this, you know, that I don't like people, by the way, getting hurt. I'm not going to sit there and say, I don't care about my 401k and make that as a pronouncement because that would have too many negatives. There are people out there, well, all it's doing is hurting senior citizens who depend on it. That's all it's doing, as if that's justification for it. I heard that yesterday on social media.
Yeah.
But what I do worry about, number one, is people's quality of life going down, and I worry about Democrats getting back in power.
Well,
that's it.
You know, and there's the thing, too, is that, what is that? To me, a 401k represents your hard work. That's your pay that goes into that. That's also you trying to do the right thing in building your retirement. You know, but that's your blood, sweat, and tears that go into that over a period of years. To have a lot of that erased as a result of government policy is tragic. And there's no way to argue that. You may not care about that tragedy, but it's a tragedy nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't take people's property decreasing lightly.
No. It represents their life.
Yeah.
It represents what they do, everything they put into it.
And to sit there and say, well, we care about Main Street, not Wall Street, Don't give me liberal, socialist, Democrat talking points.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that from the left.
That's the other thing that's
long.
been brought up that, well, we need, basically, they're sending out the message, and a ton of the surrogates are for Trump, that's the exact same message as Democrats, that we need to redistribute income from the top down to the bottom.
Well, that's, and
government is the vehicle to do that.
The criticism of Ackman, well, there's all these billionaires. You guys remember that Trump is a billionaire too, right? I mean, if you're going to do this class warfare, that's straight out of the leftist playbook. Congratulations.
Yeah. 866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Most owner-operators leased to larger carriers are paid on a per-mile basis or a percentage of revenue per load. The per-mile basis is most prevalent among larger fleets. Percentage at smaller. Pay per mile tends to dominate discussions about pay just because it's easier to measure, and pay per mile often is wrongly used as the deciding factor in leasing to a carrier. While pay per mile can be a vital factor, it's not a cure for every ill, nor does it mean a big settlement check is coming an owner-operator's way. Why? Because pay per mile always must be considered in balance with gross revenue as well as total costs. Gross revenue can include flat mileage pay that varies by length of haul, percentage revenue pay, and more. Most importantly, though, for every revenue dollar generated, only part of that dollar is profit. But for every extra dollar of cost saved, the entire dollar contributes to profit. Knowing and understanding your cost to operate is fundamental to understanding the true value of any pay package. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
Hey, it's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Hi, good morning. Well, now we know there is no dire wolves out there, that they still are extinct. We can move on with other shows. Reading this here, Trump's triple win at the Supreme Court yesterday. The justices tell lower courts to stay in their proper judicial lane.
Yeah.
We talked about this yesterday, the 5-4 majority handing Trump a partial victory by allowing his administration to continue deporting Venezuelans believed to be members of the gang under the Alien Enemies Act. The court's unsigned order notably did not rule on the legal merits, but it holds that plaintiffs must challenge their deportations in the district courts in which they are detained until under habeas corpus, rather than seek class-wide relief under the Administrative Procedure Act. Mm-hmm. And that's really good. The court issued another brushback to judges on Tuesday when they lifted an order requiring the Trump administration to reinstate 16,000 fired employees. Without ruling on the merits, justices held that the environmental groups and unions challenging the dismissals lacked legal standing to sue.
Right.
That's the bedrock Article 3 principle, that the plaintiffs must demonstrate that they are likely to suffer concrete harm as a result of a defendant's actions to bring the case in federal court. The plaintiffs claim they'd be harmed by a reduction in public services caused by the layoffs, but that is speculative at best.
It was a real reach.
Yep.
I mean, they just kind of, and I think it was a Hail Mary type approach on, well, we could make the case that eventually the diminished government services, well, you can't show that. You can't demonstrate that. And the court found that they didn't have standing, these nonprofit organizations, these groups that were suing. Mm-hmm. So.
And the court stressed the message again on Friday in a 5-4 unsigned order that let the Education Department withhold $65 million in grants for teacher training. The lower court had said that the order the funds to be reinstated, but as the court explains, the APA's limited waiver of sovereign immunity does not extend to orders to enforce contractual obligation to pay money. In other words, plaintiffs who want the feds to release frozen funds must seek relief in federal claims court. This is essentially what Alito, Gorsuch, Thomas, and Kavanaugh said in an earlier dissent in a case involving U.S. aid grants. So there you go.
Yeah.
So, he's getting more wins and losses.
Yeah, I think here
it.
with the Supreme Court, and we've said on a number of these cases, if not all of them, he'll win these cases, and it was by design. He wanted these cases to get to the Supreme Court, and so now, not all of these decisions by the Supreme Court are on the case itself. So we'll see, because the rest of it will basically have to work its way through the court, but we believe Trump will win those cases.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. I got to find a way to bring golf back into the conversation. You know, the Masters is this week.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Well, when's Media Day? Is that today?
No, I think it was
yesterday.
Yesterday. Yeah, I was so busy. I missed Media Day.
Yeah, well.
I think today is today is Wednesday, right?
It is Wednesday. Yes, it is.
Oh my! One day just blurs into another day.
It really does.
Yeah, today would be the par 3 contest, where they play the par 3 course. They have a par 3 9-hole course that the players play in. Not all the players play in it, but the families and it's like a family day there, and then the Masters will begin on Thursday.
Yeah,
and it'd be interesting to see how the place is. I mean, they fixed it up from the hurricane hit there last year.
Yeah,
they had major damage and stuff. So, but I can't think of anything that would relate to anything that we're talking about to golf right now.
Yeah.
I was able to sneak it in with the live stuff last week because it involved Trump, but.
Well, on things that piqued my interest, I saw this story in the Washington Post. Headbanging at sea on a heavy metal cruise. Because I've talked to you off the air about these things, the heavy metal cruises.
Yep.
They've been doing these, themed cruises for forever, for a long time. But I keep seeing these things. It'll pop up in my interest because it's, heavy metal's an interest. What happens when 3,000 metalheads take a Caribbean cruise? A rocking good time. In the Washington Post. And I thought to myself, who is this? Louis Palu. Louis Palu went on this cruise. I haven't read this piece yet, just a paragraph or two. But I'm looking at some of the pictures. And I've said for the longest time to people I know, I think I said to you off the air, I don't know. Some of the bands that are on whatever lineup, because it varies. Yeah, I get it, because they do shows throughout the whole thing. They set up right there in front of the pool. A stage by the pool, and they do a show. There's a theater on almost every boat, and it's a small theater, so they do shows in the theater. They have and I think to myself, that's really, okay, that would be part of the attraction. And then you're on the water. That's great. But I'm a heavy metal fan, and with all due respect to my fellow heavy metal fans, I don't know that I want to be on a boat for 4 or 5 days with you. Yeah, no. I'm just thinking.
I've never been on a cruise and have no interest in being on a cruise.
The cruise, I don't mind.
Yeah, a
themed cruise. That's the thing. It's just that one thing. And I don't care what the theme is. They've had conservative cruises. They've had
I've seen
money-based cruises, and all these things. And it's like, no, the cruise thing is fine. I'd rather be in control of the ship and go where I want to go and stay as long on an excursion as I want to stay, that kind of thing. That's more my speed. I don't like someone in charge of my clock when I'm on vacation. But otherwise, it's all right. But the one theme, it's not any given theme. It's just the fact that it's one theme for 4 or 5 days would just, I think, wear on you.
Yeah,
it would me.
There's a prog rock cruise going on right now.
Yeah. Right.
And even though it would be cool because
0 women on that cruise.
Yeah, that's the thing. 0 women.
It's all nerdy guys.
Okay, well, that's a benefit.
Yeah.
No, the nerdy guys are not a benefit.
Yeah. Not one bikini poolside. Or at least on a woman.
Well, that's another thing, though. Going to concerts now is quite depressing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really every time I go to a concert from a band that I like, for example, in the 70s, and I don't go, most the bands I go to see is still in clubs. Mm-hmm. You know, and if it's an arena or if it's bigger than a club, it's normally maybe a 1,500 to 2,000 seat auditorium.
Right.
You know, when I went to see Steve Hackett last year, the Genesis guitarist, when they actually played 15-minute songs. Wait a minute. Supper's Ready was 28 minutes, 27 minutes long.
Yeah, right.
A friend of mine, my buddy Jerry, brought his wife, and they started out with, Supper's Ready from the Genesis early album.
Yeah.
And after it was done, she said, "Is that the show?"
Right.
It's 28 minutes long.
That song had an intermission. What?
It's like no, that
happened?
But whenever I go to a show now, I get depressed because I see too many people with canes and walkers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I keep thinking of Jim Brewer talking about, man, when I go to the old person's home, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
The bands are going to bring in. They're going to be rocking down. And it's like in my room, I'm going to have my whole setup, my surround sound speakers. I'll be blasting it. And it's hilarious. But there's some truth to that, actually.
Well,
that's the thing.
I was at a self-serve car wash not too long ago, and I was cranking Tool, and I just had to rinse something off of my truck. It wasn't, I wasn't gonna spend a lot of time in that bay, so I kept the truck running and the music going, and it was pretty loud. And I opened the door and I get out, and I'm just kind of rinsing the truck off, and this guy comes around the corner and he's looking around. He's like, I said, "Can I help you?" He said, "I was just wondering where that music was coming from." "Over here, you young man. You keep to yourself. It's none of your business. Get out of my yard."
Well, I've done that too. You pull up and the music's playing loud and you're like, "Oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this anymore."
I had someone look around
guy.
at me. It was a beautiful day here a couple of weeks ago, and I was at a stoplight. And it was, again, it was cranking. I didn't have my windows down, but they did. And they were next to me. And I was looking over to, I'm always looking left and right because people, I don't know what it is. People run red lights all the time. So before I go, I'm looking both ways, making sure nobody's coming. I almost got broadsided. This guy was doing easily 60 or 70 miles an hour, just plowed through a red light. And I would have been right in the center of that intersection legally.
Happened to me just last week right here on Luna.
Yeah.
Right over, right just less than a mile from us.
And I just, I've had those near misses. So I always look around, and I looked around and I noticed this person kind of looking up at me, and I'm thinking, I don't know, something wrong? Is my truck on fire? What's going on? Then I realized they were trying to find where that music was coming from. None of your business.
Did you have the bass up so the whole car was shaking?
Oh yeah, no, it moves that truck. And I have to be alone when I do that. I don't do that to other people.
Same with me.
It's not,
Well, you know what I gave up on a long, long time ago? It's like, maybe I can meet a woman who's into the same music that I am.
No. I love my wife, but we are, when it comes to music, we enjoy some of the same stuff. Like every once in a while, I mellow out to the Eagles. We like the Eagles. We both like the Eagles. stuff like that. So we listen to, and we both like a lot of country music. There's a lot of country music that we, most of the older stuff actually, mostly older stuff. But when it comes to metal, it's me and my son and my grandson, my 6-year-old grandson, who loves Tool. So when I'm running errands by myself or traveling by myself, that's when I crank. That's when it's full blast. But even then, about 2 hours into a road trip, if I'm going to see my parents or something, I turn it down. It's like, okay, that's enough. Grow up. Time to grow up. Cut your hair. The war's over.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever go on a music cruise or a theme cruise.
Well, any theme cruise. This article, I can't wait to read through it from the Washington Post because he went on the cruise. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And he's writing about it and the observations in there. But there's a couple that has makeup on their face, this goth-looking makeup on their face. Look, they're doing their thing. And they're on vacation. They're spending money, a lot of hard-earned money to do that. And that I actually enjoy. Watching people enjoy themselves, knowing, they've been planning for months, if not years, to go on one of these things. Or maybe that's their annual vacation or something like that. Those stories I'm interested in, right? But I'm not, to me, I want to experience a ton of different things. And I'm going to have my headphones on. It's funny because he's talking about the writer says, as he's eating his pancakes, the guitar work of Tony Iommi of Black Sabbath is playing in the background. I'm like, that's the best.
Well, the thing is, when
my wife would not be able to go on that cruise. But
when you mention goth, I just can't imagine 60 and 70-year-olds, all looking like what's his name from The Cure.
Oh yeah, Robert Smith.
Yeah, I can't, because the look isn't even good on him anymore.
Yeah,
it doesn't fit. It's like, you're an old man. Stop it.
Well, at some point you look like you wandered into mommy's dressing room and got into her makeup box, or that at your age you're really trying to cover something up.
Well, I think you were like me. I never got into, and this is one thing that I always found interesting, the people that imitate the genre of music that they like, and it's how they dress. I never dressed for any genre of music, ever.
No.
I mean, I might have had a concert T-shirt or something like that.
Well, on stage, when I was on stage, I did.
Of course.
We played, that was the type of music we were playing. But I didn't wear that 24/7. That wasn't what I wore.
Yeah, I just
when I went to dinner.
But I was into so much. I mean, that's the one thing, and that was the beauty, I think, of the age that we grew up in with Top 40 radio.
Yeah,
because Top 40 radio played every single genre of music that you could never do today. Everything is too compartmentalized.
Yeah,
right. We only play Texas country. You don't even play no.
Well, it's funny because
you can't play that other country crap.
It's funny you say that about dressing the part thing. It's like because in my opinion, you really got to be like a bona fide rock star to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So there are people that can get away with it. My fellow bandmate, former bandmate Steven Tyler, he can get away with that. But I saw Richie Sambora the other day, who's no longer with Bon Jovi, hasn't been for years, and I saw him and he was out in public and dressed, and I thought, yeah, but he's slowly morphing into Nancy Pelosi. You know what I mean? There's a point where it's like, oh, that's not working at all.
No, but
you don't even look like a rock star.
You mentioned Steven Tyler, and I haven't seen how he looks now, but I mean, 10 years ago, he'd be walking around in public dressed like Steven Tyler, and you're like, oh, okay, but that's who he is.
That's Steven Tyler.
Yeah, if he was walking around in the stuff I'm wearing right now,
you'd ask him what's wrong.
Yeah, you'd say, what's wrong with you? You look like a normal person.
If I was dressed like Steven Tyler, you'd also ask me, what's wrong with you?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, what happened?
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Coming up following the top of the hour, federal judge rules that the White House's Associated Press ban is unconstitutional. And we'll parse through that and look at the whole First Amendment issues on that one. The Republicans, will they be able to? They got today, really, I think, because they're supposed to be out of town tomorrow. They have today to get that framework bill done for the next 10 years. And they're talking about the fact that, look, we need to get this to get to reconciliation. And in reconciliation, then, is when we'll do all the cutting. And so there's this whole concern now within the Republican Party that you're going to have some of the conservatives say, no, we don't want this. And everything I read yesterday is they don't have the votes yet.
Right, yeah.
As of yesterday. And so they're, from what I know, they're done after today, and then they're gone for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's at that particular point, if we're still upping the tariff game every single day and the stock market keeps going down and we're no closer to getting any type of pro-growth legislation from the Republicans, that is not the best scenario.
Yeah. It's, again, I don't have any confidence because of the way the continuing resolution went down. It was like, well, no, you can fight your fight later. And then, again, it seems that the theme here is, listen, we need to get this done so we can get to reconciliation later. And that's where you can do the fighting. Sounds like kicking the can, and we'll see what happens today.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You know, we had talked about the whole false story about the whole dire wolves coming back, being genetically engineered by scientists from the past. The story's false. But here's yesterday, Fox 5 Atlanta. The dire wolf, made famous in the hit HBO series Game of Thrones, has been genetically engineered by scientists in the U.S. after going extinct around 13,000 years ago.
No.
Completely false. And the whole thing is the company that does this was clear it was not genetically engineered.
Nope.
If people, call up and say, I can't believe anything I read anymore, I understand why.
No, I mean, I don't know how many stories we've seen like this where the false version continues to have legs.
Well, Charlottesville, they're still using it.
Well, yeah. And, on pop culture, things like this, here's what they know. News organizations know, well, we got to get the click. You jump on the whole thing with the, because apparently everybody but me saw Game of Thrones. And
me.
And it's a clicker. You're going to jump on it. Well, read the whole story. And if they're not telling the whole story, something's got to, doesn't something seem off? Even if it doesn't, wouldn't you want to read a different version? I mean, a few different sources.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's 99.9% gray wolf. but it looks cool.
Yeah, it's just I just happened to say before we went on the air, and we had done the story before, and we're just like, because I saw the same thing, and I went, wait a minute, what do you mean they genetically engineered? And I went by it and said, that's not true. I just assumed it wasn't true. And later on, it was a couple hours later, I actually had a busy day yesterday. I had a life yesterday.
Oh.
And so it's when I got back home and checked it out and go, okay, figures. It's a false story, but legitimate. You know, we go back to looking at the CNBC story from the day before that Trump was going to do a 90-day pause on the completely false story. And they got it simply from somebody on social media posted it, so it became the news.
Right. Yeah.
It's almost as if you don't need to check your facts anymore. You don't need to say, well, who are these sources? Because there was, from what I know, the stories that were out there weren't source stories. And then the Wolf one, if you actually read the original article that came out on it, the company made clear, no, this is not a genetically engineered dire wolf.
Right.
Doesn't matter. We want it to be. Look, if a man can be a woman because the man said so, then a dire wolf can be genetically engineered because we say so.
Well, you know, and I also thought to myself, but how far do you take it, right? Because if this whole thing is built on your fascination with the Game of Thrones, are you just wanting to get a white dog? Isn't that what you're really? Because you're not going to own a wolf. You shouldn't.
I wouldn't suggest it.
I have at least 3 reasons why. Number 1, it's a wolf. 2 and 3 aren't even relevant beyond that.
Right.
But aren't you just
Number
looking
2,
for...
They're not potty trained.
Aren't you just and nor will they be. Did you see Game of Thrones? Because I didn't. But I have no idea what happened with the gray wolves or white wolves or whatever. What you want is a white dog. I had a dog that looked like a fox. She was a mixed breed, but she looked a lot like a fox. So we had to keep a bandana on her because she was also very sly in getting out a lot and loved to roam. In fact, that's how we lost her. She got out and got hit. But she was a beautiful, beautiful dog, but looked a lot like a wild animal. And so we had to make sure that she had all of her tags on and had, we kept a bandana around her neck so people would know in case she got out that she's domesticated, that she's not a wild animal. You know, I didn't get, I got her as a pup. I had no idea that she was going to end up looking that way, but a lot of people will get something that's more exotic looking, which is fine. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking at here. Oh, look, dire wolves. Well, what does that mean to you? They're not going to be at Petco next week. Look, the dire wolf is back. Let's binge Game of Thrones for the 19th time. It's just, I don't know. It's just weird that they want it to be something that it's not. And the media helps that with the story, over and over again. And it's an echo chamber kind of story. There's one version that's repeating across a number of media groups. That is the wrong version. It's the false version. And experts looked at this early on and said, look at the data. Look at what we're talking about here. These aren't dire wolves. These are gray wolves. Made to look like dire wolves.
Yeah. That really is incredible. And, you take that with the CNBC story where they just took it off social media.
Right.
They didn't even try to verify it at all. They didn't even go to their own sources.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what I saw on social media had no sources.
Right.
They just took it off social. Boom. Let's take this story.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, caused, I think, the biggest movement in the stock market ever in that shorter period of time. I was reading that yesterday.
Yeah, it was a massive swing. $2.4 trillion pop based on a lie or false information.
Let me check out. I have not checked out the the future markets in an hour. Let's check it out here. Okay, European stocks plunged 2.6%. The
Dow's basically even right now.
Wow,
down just 3 points.
What happened there? It was at 500 last hour.
Yeah,
and then it was okay. I'm telling you, the movement's just the movement is unbelievable.
Yeah, the swing is all over the place. This is chaos. It really is chaos.
I like the one CNBC has it on during the day, which is the whatever the graph is for volatility.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
yeah.
And the thing is, it's in the green every day as if green is good. It's like no, green is bad. You don't want that going up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And they have it as green, and it's like, no, that's not a good green. That's a bad green.
Yeah, that's one of the very few charts that's bad if it's green.
I'm sitting here on CNBC, and I'm looking at all the pre-markets here,
mm-hmm.
and it's like Christmas because they keep going. I'm telling you, it's like flashing lights:
mm-hmm.
green, red, green, red, green, red,
yeah.
green, red. As I'm sitting here the last couple of minutes watching it, now it's gone red. But then you have the S&P go green, and then the NASDAQ go red, and then the Dow futures go green and red. I mean, they're just flying back and forth. In just the time I've been talking here, for example, the Dow futures has moved like 150 points either way.
Yeah, because it was +3 or -3, and then went +10 somewhere around there, and now it's -60 or 42. That's the other thing. It was 66 and then jumped to 42. Those moves are, it's, you probably have some, again, someone called it the bear market bounce. That's a real thing, but it's uncertainty.
Yeah, which is the worst.
Yeah.
Because when there's uncertainty, then investors don't invest.
Right.
It's that simple.
Right.
And if they don't invest and you don't have capital, and you and I talked about this too, you've got to have cash on hand right now.
Right. Yeah, cash is king right now.
Yep.
You look at the Berkshire move that everybody's talking about, and that was something likely anticipating what would happen with the tariffs. You park some cash and you wait it out. And I don't know how many firms are doing that. I have no idea. But it's clear that a number of investors are doing that. And there's buying opportunity if the market goes down. You buy on the downside and then hope that something's going to pop like it did the other day.
Mm-hmm.
But that could be short-lived too.
As it was.
That's the uncertainty. You also don't want to reach out for that falling knife. You don't want to buy something and then have that keep imploding. I don't know where the bottom is here.
I think the last time we did this had to be March and April of 2020, right?
Yeah.
The last time you and I were just had all the markets in front of us looking at it going, oh, wow, look at that.
Because it wasn't known what the long-term effect of COVID would be.
Wow. The Dow futures went from like +40 to -185 in about 3 minutes.
Because for every group of buyers seeking opportunity, there are others looking to sell off if it pops again, right? Okay,
Yeah.
if it gets to this point, then it's just, it really is, it's uncertainty right now.
Let me look at the Asian markets. Shanghai is the only one, and that's the Chinese biggest stock market. They're the only ones that have been consistently up.
Mm-hmm. The Hang Seng is
Hang
now
Seng
up.
also is up. Yeah,
it was
they're
down
up.
before,
It was down
but it's
before.
up now.
It's up now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And let me see for Europe. Everything's down in Europe.
Mm.
Roughly, if you take an average of everything in Europe, roughly about 2.5%. Everybody is down.
Mm-hmm.
European stuff. Okay, I'm close enough. I just looked at the crawler on top. 2.6% at the opening. At the open. So
yeah.
So we'll see what happens there, and who knows? Who knows where it goes today?
Well,
I don't know.
It looks like the world is just basically waiting for, okay, what's next? You know? So I don't know. Are we is the market at a plateau? Well, nobody knows. Is the market at a plateau just waiting to see what the next move is going to be? If either side, China or the U.S., is going to flinch, if other trade partners are going to flinch, if the U.S. is going to flinch, what move
Are they
will
paying
there
attention to that, or are they looking at the 10 and 30-year Treasury bill right now?
Well, you know, Peter Schiff, you and I have been following Peter Schiff online and on X, and he posted earlier, it goes back to a couple of hours ago. Let me see if I can find. In fact, I clicked the like button on that, so I probably got that bookmarked. All right, let's see here. Here he is from 3 hours ago, Peter Schiff. As I warned earlier, the Treasury market is crashing. The yield on the 10-year just hit 4.5%, and the yield on the 30-year just hit 5%. Without an emergency rate cut tomorrow morning, that being Wednesday morning, and the announcement of a massive QE program, which I don't see that happening.
Which, just so people know, that would be printing money to buy your own debt again, which got us into a lot of the inflation we saw to begin with.
Tomorrow could be a 1987-style stock market crash. Again, that's Peter Schiff on X about 3 hours ago.
Kramer was wrong on that on Monday, where he said he expected that.
Yeah, I don't take it.
I don't make predictions on this stuff. I don't know.
No.
I know it's
Well,
not. I know economics, what is happening, you cannot raise the cost of goods. You cannot raise the cost and not have a negative effect. It's that simple.
Right, yeah.
You can spin it any way you want, and if you spin it any other way than that, you're BSing.
Right. I by the way, I don't see an emergency rate cut or a massive QE
Neither do I.
program announced.
Yeah.
I don't think the Fed will do anything at all.
Now, if Trump, this is the problem. When Trump or the administration speaks yesterday, the information they gave out, in my opinion, made the stock market start going down from where it was. If Trump comes out and starts screaming at the Fed, that would tomorrow, which he could because he's done it already, that could be viewed as a complete sign of weakness or confidence in what he is doing.
Well, he's been asking the
markets.
Fed for a couple of months now to lower rates again. You know, but if he's doing it, asking them to do it for this reason, then that's a problem.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up, we will get to that Associated Press story about a federal judge saying that the ban is unconstitutional. Why would the ban be unconstitutional? Because the White House said they did it for the fact that they would not call the Gulf of
America.
They called the Gulf of America the Gulf of
Mexico.
Mexico. And the judge said any other reason would be fine, but you can't do it for that. So we'll delve into that because I'm looking at the First Amendment and I don't see that in there.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that coming up. But you had just mentioned here, it's now just came out a little while ago, one of the lead stories now at Fox News, which, again, the conservative media, the GOP media, because not necessarily at times conservative, but the more supportive of GOP media have really not had a lot of negative stories on the whole tariff thing. And this Howard Kurtz, Donald Trump's allies, supporters, and donors led by Elon Musk push to end the tariff war. That was the indication I got yesterday. And again, I said it was anecdotal evidence because just because I sense something doesn't mean it's actually happening across all of social media because I can't see all of social media. But I told you it was the first day that I sensed a more negative tone from Trump's supporters and a lot more questions coming up as to whether this was going to work or not. And I don't know whether it was because the stock market was up 1,000 points and then ended up down over 300. And so there was that 1,300 point drop at that particular point. I don't know if that's what drove it. Whether it was Elon Musk coming out and saying that Navarro is a moron for the things that he is that he is saying, and a lot more criticism of Lutnick and Navarro. And as you pointed out, you can point to those people, but everything always goes back to the president. So we'll get to that coming up and more. 866-90 Red Eye.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. After our show is over, we record our entire show, and it becomes our podcast. So after the show is over, you can, if you weren't able to catch the show on a particular morning, or if you only catch part of it and want to catch the other part of it, you can do so on our Red Eye Radio app.
Essentially, what we're saying is it's never over.
No, never over. There's the Fox News story. Donald Trump's allies and supporters and donors led by Elon Musk push to end tariff war. From media talking heads to multi-billionaire GOP donors, critics of Trump's Liberation Day run far and wide.
Yeah.
Liberation Day, in quotes, stunt is the way that was written, run far and wide, and go through everything that we've talked about, whether it was Rich Lowry or Ben Shapiro or the Wall Street Journal editorial page or National Review or the donors, the co-founder of Home Depot who denounced the tariffs and said the 46% levy on Vietnam was an example of bull, the rest of the word. What Bill Ackman has said, what Jamie Dimon has said, and going through all of that. And then, again, going to Elon Musk, who called Peter Navarro a moron and dumber than a sack of bricks. And the fact is, you've got the lead guy who is viewed, really, when you think about it, he is viewed by many people as more prominent and important to the Trump administration than even J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
And so you look at that, and he, because of what has gone on in Doge and what he has found, is beloved, and boom. He's not just going after Peter Navarro. When he does this, his aim is right at Trump, his boss, because Trump is following exactly what Navarro wants. and you say this cannot. If I'm Susie Wiles, I'm saying this can't go on.
Well, there's a couple of things here with the researchers coming out yesterday and making it clear. You cited our information and totally distorted it.
Yeah. You came up with the wrong formula. You messed up your math.
You got it all wrong.
And then the Trump administration made clear, well, we don't care if we got it wrong. We're going forward with it anyway.
And that's clearly, we've talked about how the president has for decades talked about trade imbalance. The question is, what constitutes the trade imbalance? Now we know from the researchers they got it wrong. We knew it was wrong, but they're telling us how wrong they got it.
They were telling us precisely the mathematical equation of why it was wrong.
And so you've got Peter Navarro and Lutnick that are pushing those numbers. The president didn't put those numbers together. They did. And so if you have that coupled with the push by Elon Musk, if anybody has the president's ear on this that can cut through Navarro and Lutnick, and I'm not saying he can, but I'm saying if anybody can, it's Elon Musk. But I don't know to what extent where it goes.
Well, as I forgot who pointed out yesterday, they said even if Trump says, okay, you're gone, Elon Musk doesn't go away.
Oh, no,
Somebody else in the administration might go away. Elon Musk is not going away. Mm-hmm. And if Trump says, okay, you're out, Elon Musk, and I don't know how he could become much louder than he was yesterday, because I didn't even see it first. I was busy yesterday, and this is part of the group text that I'm in with my, a couple of my buddies and total Trump supporters that have been saying, well, let's give him a chance. And all of a sudden, one of them said yesterday, because of the Elon Musk thing, said, whoa, wow, Elon Musk really went after Navarro. I thought it was from a couple days ago. Mm-hmm. I had no idea he did it again. Mm-hmm. I thought my buddy is just, okay, he's just catching up on the news now. I didn't pay attention to it till later on when I got home, and I went, whoa. Yeah. You're talking about something that you never see in a presidential administration. You don't see that kind of fighting going back, those kind of names being used. Right. I mean, those are firing words in any administration, because what Elon Musk is doing, he's targeting Navarro, but what he's saying is the guy that I'm the closest to is completely wrong on this.
Yeah.
Because if you call Navarro a moron for what he is doing and what he is saying, it mirrors exactly where Trump is. So it's a de facto name call of calling Trump a moron, and everybody knows it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, whoa, this cannot continue to go on. I really wonder what Susie Wiles is doing, the chief of staff. How do you get this under control?
Yeah, here's the thing, too. All the market forces working against you. Elon Musk is the least of your problems politically.
Well,
because
he's not, because he takes away your excuse.
Well, I mean, he has a voice, but what I mean is the reality of the markets is the crushing part of it. It's the effective part of it. So my point is that if you want to get rid of Elon Musk and say, well, we're parting ways, we don't see eye to eye, it doesn't matter. The markets are handing you the reality.
Right.
So you can't just excuse it away and say, well, we can clear it up by, saying Elon Musk is no longer going to have that prominent role. Let's be clear. You haven't seen much of Doge over the last 2 weeks.
I guess my point is, after the stock market, because you saw yesterday in the morning, all the surrogates were saying, see, this is all great. The stock market loves what Trump is doing. They love what Trump is doing. And it was all over the place on social media. Mm-hmm. And then, boom, you had Elon Musk come out and do it. And then the stock market went from 1,000 up to 300 and whatever and ended up being 320 down.
Yeah, the Elon Musk comment actually happened pretty early in the day.
Exactly. So I'm not saying that it affected it, but people felt that. It is the quietest that I've seen. That's why I came in and I said, whoa, this is the first time that I sensed the totality of social media was negative against Trump on social media. Mm-hmm. And part of it was probably because his surrogates aren't saying anything. And then when the surrogates are saying anything, I'll say this, in the article in Fox News, they do quote Meghan McCain, who has, by the way, been pounding on Democrats recently. Have you seen that? She's been pounding on them. Not again that she is the ultimate conservative at all, but she did make a good point. She said, because I've seen this, it was on the 5, and it was the judge who came out and said, I really don't care about my 401k.
Yeah.
The 401k doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. That's you can't do that. And she writes, there are so many hypocritical talking heads on TV saying they don't care about losing money or being in financial pain for a while. Most of you are married to financial bros, come from rich families, or have huge media contracts. You have a cushion. One of my best friends buys her groceries for her family based on what coupons each store has. I assure you the possible recession or huge rise in prices everywhere will be a different experience for her family than you. And that's the entire point.
Yeah, that was my point. Your 401k is your life's work.
Right. But when you're saying you're doing it for the working person.
Yeah.
And then you have all the elites saying, we don't care, the 401k doesn't bother us. Well, 60% of Americans that aren't in your income bracket or have the security you have are going, what the hell's going on? Why are we doing this? Yeah. I asked a question to 3 people I know yesterday. I said, what's the end goal of the president?
Yeah.
They didn't know. They could not articulate what the end game of the. That's a problem. Well, and finally, I've been looking at all the polls. You can see the polls slowly going down. Mm-hmm. Rasmussen even, because Rasmussen was bragging last week. No, the president's doing fine when he was at 51%. Now he's at 47%.
Right.
And you see it across the board slow. And it was before this, the biggest numbers that were underwater for the president were on the economy and inflation and not doing enough about prices. Mm-hmm. That's a problem. Why? Because the border's not an issue anymore. That's out of people's minds because he credit himself for doing it because he's the one responsible for it. And it was a great, great moment in American history to show that the Democrats were lying to you. But once that problem is solved, it's solved. People move on to the next problem. The next problem, the economy, inflation, now 401ks.
And the full effect of retail we're not even close to feeling that yet.
No.
You want to see sentiment change, consumer sentiment change, and political sentiment change when that effect starts to really move in and settle in. That's game-changing kind of thing. If you don't change something, there's no way to mend that because you can't come out and say, this is for the long-term good. Nobody cares about the long-term good when they're underwater. The number one rule when I became a lifeguard, the number one thing you have to remember is the person underwater will push you underwater to get air. They're desperate. They don't care. They're underwater. They're desperate for air. You need to make sure you know that when you approach.
Reach, throw, row, go. But you don't jump in the first thing to save a drowning person because they'll pull you under.
And you have to be careful of how you handle them. Everything.
Yep. Oh, I remember because I did I was a lifeguard too. Well, I never was a lifeguard, but I passed a lifeguard training. Mm-hmm. Remember how when you did approach them, how you had to really violently grab them?
Mm-hmm. And turn them. Yep.
Violently grab them
and swim with them basically on your hip.
Right.
As you kept them above water. But they're going to be desperate. And the trainers, my trainers, They made sure you knew how desperate they would be. And you came away choking because you were swallowing a bunch of water that first 2 or 3 times until you got it right.
And then yesterday, I think the worst thing is when you saw, especially in the last 12 hours, what's happening now that, China's going to dump treasuries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you saw the 30-year skyrocket to what, 5%? 5%. And then you had the 10-year go from, 3.9 just a couple of days ago, which they were celebrating, to 4.5. I think last I saw it was between like 4.45, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about a half a point in that quick of a time. And now you've got people panicking out there because of that.
And again, when people are underwater, when the consumer is underwater, they're desperate for anything. And if you tell them, sorry, you don't get air just yet, it's not going to work.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it as always. Coming up, you see Jake Tapper gets blasted by Lindy Lee. Lindy Lee's back going, "You wrote the book? Excuse me."
Yeah, right. Yeah,
like,
that was pretty funny. Yeah.
So we'll get to that. We'll keep updated as to the markets across the world and here in the United States, the future markets. And I don't see. I'm trying to look right now. I haven't checked them in a couple of minutes here. See where it's going. Okay, the pre-markets, United States. Okay, in positive territory right now. Dow futures have moved just in the last 25 minutes. I don't know, what, 300 points?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going up and down and up and down. And like I said, it's like I'm watching Christmas lights because they go green, red, green, red, green, red, green, red, green, red, green, red, green, red.
Right.
But the oil now down 58.07.
And keep in mind, though, this is the 90 minutes of the day that Trump is asleep. So during his waking hours and during the market hours, during the trade hours, trading hours, it will be very different based on what is said.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, he's Eric Harley and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. I like your theory. What's your conspiracy theory about the Elon Musk-Navarro back and forth?
And I am going to be proven 100% right on this unless I'm proven wrong.
Okay. I like this.
I like this massive disclaimers, unless I'm wrong. It could be Elon Musk is doing this social media battle with Navarro, which by default is also criticizing President Trump, in order to get Trump to react and say, eventually, Elon Musk is no longer associated with me. And then, in turn, liberals will start buying Teslas again. I'm 100% right on that, unless I'm wrong.
Get out of here.
He's no longer. He was never MAGA. Liberals are going, oh, you know what? That new Tesla looks pretty good.
China controls him.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then all the liberals will love him, and Tesla will boom.
Yeah.
There was.
I'll stick with that one for the next two minutes.
I like that though. I did like that. Eric just said it to me right before we went on the air, and I said, "Okay, you got to repeat that one."
Yeah, I was saying it actually as it was building in my brain. I thought, "Oh, wait a minute."
Now you're going to see that on social media. What's really going on? They're really getting along.
Yeah.
He's just doing this so Trump can fire him, and then the liberals will like Tesla again, and then buy his product.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
The White House. This is from Fox News. The White House violated the Constitution for barring the Associated Press from the Oval Office events, according to a federal judge's ruling on Tuesday. U.S. District Judge Trevor McFadden, a Trump appointee, said that the White House acted against the First Amendment, which prohibits discrimination based on viewpoints, by blocking the longtime publication's access over its refusal to use the term Gulf of America. The government offers no other plausible explanation for the treatment of Associated Press. That is true. I mean, they've made it clear that's why they're doing it. The Constitution forbids viewpoint discrimination even in a non-public forum like the Oval Office, McFadden wrote. Does it? Does the First Amendment say you cannot have viewpoint discrimination? I don't see it anywhere in the First Amendment.
I don't.
You can't punish somebody.
I mean, that's his interpretation, the judge's interpretation of this, and I don't. You would have to demonstrate that to me.
I want to see the precedent behind that one, is what I need to see for that. But I cannot see, just from a cursory look right now, I don't know where he gets that from. The government cannot punish you.
Right. For something you, in the case of a free press, they can't go after you for anything that you publish.
Right.
The government can't.
Now, what he said was that they can show discrimination for any other reason. They can just say, we don't want you in here anymore. But when they said, we're doing this because you won't say our term, that in itself is against the First Amendment.
Well, and then he also went on to talk about the disadvantage it creates for Associated Press and their business model.
Well, that's
and that's not relevant at all.
That's not relevant at all.
There are many media companies that struggle for a number of reasons, and saying, basically he was saying that they are left, that the Associated Press is left to, because they don't have access to the Oval Office pressers or direct access to the White House, that they've just basically got to go get something, somewhere else, and made it sound like they can't do any work on the White House at all. Well, I'd say this. They may not be able to. By the way, there is no inherent right for any of them to be called on either. The meme was out there yesterday. AP wins the right to not be called on by Levitt.
Well, can you go? That would be again the point that I would bring up, when obviously the Biden administration kept a number of conservative outlets out of there, which we know is because of their opinion. When you go and call on the question, if you're saying that they must have access to the room, well, must they have the same access? Should the asking of questions be equal?
Right.
By who the White House press secretary decides to pick?
And then go further. Should the White House or Levitt or the president or whoever is in front of them representing the president, should they be forced to answer the question in a certain way? I mean, how long or how far could you extrapolate this out in terms of what rights the media has versus, again, the right to not be punished by the government for publishing something.
Right. If Associated Press put out put out and said, for example, Associated Press won't call it Gulf of America, therefore we're putting that reporter in jail. I'm just trying to get a clear, just a clear distinction. That would be against the First Amendment.
Right.
'Cause that's the government punishing you for doing something. But there's nothing that requires the White House to do any press events at all.
No, right.
There's nothing that requires them to do that in the Constitution.
Right.
They do it voluntarily. So it's limited to begin with the number of people that they can have in. We all know they like to have more of the people that agree with them and compliment them because it makes it look good. Mm-hmm. Because really every single time you have a press briefing, except for Karine Jean-Pierre, it's to try to put your White House in a more positive light.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I look at this and I'm like, okay, is it? Well, then how far would it go? But the fact that...
Because he seems to be... the judge here seems to be saying that the AP is being punished because there's damage to the AP because they can't compete with other media groups in the same way. Well, first of all, none of them get called on every single day. You know what I mean? There isn't, there may be some up front. Ducey gets called on a lot. But that was the case, in fact, with Karine Jean-Pierre during the Biden administration. But you're not going to see this again. There is no inherent right to be called on when they're there. So what is access in today's world? What is access to a White House press briefing or the president in the Oval Office? Because if there's a transcript of it, or which there often is, or it's televised, or it's on the media, it's broadcast on the media, or something like that, then pretty much anybody has access to that information. The point being is that it makes it seem like the judge would also go to the point of saying, well, then they have a right to have their questions answered. Well, no, they don't.
Well, here's an example I would put in. If you have for example, let's say it's something else and completely different topic, and the reporter gets up there and says, look, we know you're a Nazi. And every time he would say, I preface my question with the fact that it's common knowledge that you're a Nazi.
Yes.
Well, that's a lie to begin with, but that's a viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can she kick them out?
Right.
How far does how far does it go? What is the precedent on viewpoint discrimination?
Right. Well, remember when Jim Acosta was kicked out? He was kicked out because he wouldn't give the microphone over to other people in the media.
Right, but that was a disruption, though.
Well, that's what I mean.
Right.
The reason he was kicked out was because of his behavior, not his viewpoint.
Right.
And so, but we know what his viewpoint was. And again, there are many in that room that don't share the viewpoint of whatever administration is in power at that time. There are many that don't get into that room. So my question then would be, does this mean that others in the media should have access to the White House that don't have access and aren't in that media group at the White House press office? Does the White House then, from this, if this were to stand and it doesn't go into effect for 5 days, he's allowing the Trump administration to appeal here.
Appeal, right.
But if this were to stand, well, does that mean you need to make more room for others who want to, other media groups? And does it mean that, okay, well, Associated Press, you get back in, well, then Levitt has to call on them too, or the president has to call on them because you're showing, well, wait a minute. That happens all the time.
Well, because
there's no inherent right to be called
right,
on.
because the fact if she doesn't call on you, then you're just sitting there and observing.
Mm-hmm.
You can observe that on C-SPAN.
That's what I was saying earlier.
Right.
It's in today's world.
Right.
It's often broadcast, and there's or a transcript.
Yeah, it's broadcast every single day.
Mm-hmm.
You can find it, C-SPAN, whatever. It's there. You can get access to the press conference, so you're not being shut.
I was referring to things like the Oval Office. They don't always show things like that because this is because the judge referred to even situations which would be more limited, but that includes the Oval Office, which is more limited. Because I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. There may be a president who says, all right, I want to take the media on a tour of the White House. And we're gonna walk through the halls of the West Wing like they did on the TV show The West Wing as you ask questions. That's going to be the presser every day. The point being is that how much room should any given White House have to make for the media?
Well, I'll give you an example. When Bush brought in all the conservative talk show hosts that one time to have a discussion, could a liberal talk show host say, why I'm being, because obviously he just wanted to hear from conservatives. Could you make the case that that's violating the First Amendment because I am being omitted because of my political bias, because of my viewpoint on it?
I wanted to assume because he didn't ask me, and I'm a conservative.
Exactly. He didn't ask me either.
Yeah. I demand access. Well, because if you say, well, it hurts the AP business model. Well, there are many media companies, and you could say that in today's world, how many media companies are there, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many individuals where you could claim, you see the YouTube channels? That's, news from Ron.
But that's not punishment.
News from Daryl.
That's not punishment under the First Amendment.
No,
punishment would be fining. Punishment would be putting you in jail.
And that's why I think the judge cited the business model thing. He was trying to say that has a negative, it damages their business model. And so that's damage that's inflicted by in this case, the Trump administration, the government.
But it's not damage, it's punishment.
Right.
It's punishment, but your business model has never been viewed in the First Amendment as the punishment. It's the government taking action against you, either keeping you from having your free speech or punishing you, which would be through fines or jail time.
Right.
Not that the fact that they say, nope, we believe you're lying, and so we're not going to let you in. Well, you must let them in because of their viewpoint. Be interesting to see if this gets to the Supreme Court, how they view it.
Yeah. I mean,
and I just want to see, there may be some, look, I'm
where it goes.
I'm being upfront. There may be something I'm missing here as to the precedent, but just reading the First Amendment, I don't see how that violates the First Amendment.
Well, again, in today's...
You may view it as wrong. You may say, well, I believe that's wrong, but is it against the First Amendment? Is it against the Constitution?
Right.
Because being wrong and being against the Constitution can be two separate things completely.
Right.
Because government's always wrong, and that isn't viewed as unconstitutional.
Well, again, no. I mean, that's why I get back to, okay, the press secretary lies to the media. Then you're doing damage to the media, right? I mean, if you're lying to them, should they be forced to? Well, they must tell the truth at all times. And they must answer the question of everybody. Everybody in the room gets to ask a question, and it must be answered. It must be answered truthfully. I mean, how far you want to go?
You're damaging my business model because I'm reporting on you.
Exactly. I mean, it just doesn't add up to me. I'm with you. Maybe somebody else could add something to it that I don't see here, but the appeal will definitely happen. We'll see how far that goes.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hotshot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. At a roadside inspection, inspectors may ask to see supporting documents. A supporting document is a document generated or received by a motor carrier in the normal course of business that can be used by law enforcement to verify a driver's logs. These documents can include bills of lading, itineraries, schedules, or equivalent documents that indicate the origin and destination of each trip. They can also include dispatch or trip records, expense receipts related to on-duty/not driving periods, including receipts for meals, lodging, and fuel, electronic mobile communication transmitted through a fleet management system, and payroll records, settlement sheets, or equivalent documents that indicate payment to a driver. Drivers using paper logs must also keep toll receipts. Supporting documents must contain the driver's name, carrier-assigned identification number or vehicle unit number that can be linked to the driver, the date, the name of the nearest city, town, or village, and the time. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. So be interesting to see where that leads. I'm sure the White House will appeal that on Associated Press up, all the way to the Supreme Court. I just don't see where it violates the First Amendment.
Right. Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, I just you might, if you want to call it petty, you can call it petty. But the fact is, viewpoint discrimination. There are so many press outlets out there that have been have been rejected from getting a press pass in the past because of where they stand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't see it unless there's a precedent to the First Amendment. I don't see that in the First Amendment.
Right.
If you said we're going to put you in jail for what you have said, or we're going to fine you for what you said, we're going to send the Department of Justice after you.
Right, direct punishment, yeah.
Obviously, that's a First Amendment case.
Yep.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, just updating a story from earlier before. The dire story that the dire wolf is still extinct. There you go.
Yeah, they're gone. Let it go. It's over.
I just love that story. It's like, no, that's completely wrong. There's nothing right about that one.
Well, and if not for Game of Thrones, nobody would care. Everybody'd ask, why did you do that?
A prominent former fundraiser from the Democratic National Committee blasted CNN's Jake Tapper. This is from Fox News. Blasted CNN's Jake Tapper's upcoming book as a slap in the face to the people who were scolded for questioning former President Biden's fitness for office. Lee, a well-known fundraiser who raised money for the Democratic 2024 presidential campaign, announced her exit from the party in December after being ostracized for criticizing then Democratic presidential nominee Vice President Kamala Harris. She was a loyal supporter of President Biden until she called for him to step aside because he was too old to serve a second term, and believes she was gaslighted into initially believing Biden was sharp as a tack. That she was gaslighted. She couldn't figure out that there was something wrong with Biden. She was gaslighted. Do you buy that one?
No.
I don't buy that either.
No, she has eyes. I don't believe she's stupid.
We said this before about her because she's been very critical of the Democrats, but she's trying to make it seem that she had no idea. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. It was all of Americans did. The vast majority of Americans did.
Yeah.
They knew it, and you're like, I was gaslighted. They told me everything's fine with them, and I believed them.
No.
Man, I'm telling you.
No, I don't buy that at all.
Tapper was roasted online earlier this year for his upcoming book, Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. The book, co-written by Axios journalist Alex Thompson, was attacked as hypocritical after critics unearthed a 2020 video of Tapper lecturing then Trump 2020 campaign advisor Lara Trump for calling out Biden's mental faculties. Lee appeared on a couple of shows last week and questioned if people genuinely felt that Biden was fit to serve another term or if they were simply in on the unsaid thing. Through much of 2024, Biden's cognitive issues were dismissed by Democrats and liberal media outlets. Sort of reminds me, Jake Tapper announced that he has a book about the scandal around Biden's health. It's like, dude, you were running cover for it for 3 years, while some of us were literally talking about it literally 4 or 5 years ago, said host David Rubin, which, of course, we've talked about. Lee rolled her eyes as Rubin mentioned Tapper's book, saying he ticks me off a lot. I'm not quoting that exactly.
Yeah.
So there you go. But the whole Lindy Lee thing that she was gaslighted, give me a break.
No.
God.
No. If you want to say they were trying to gaslight everybody else and you didn't buy it from the get-go, everybody who wanted to be honest about it saw it and said it. But she was part of it. And why? Oh, because she was a big part of the party fundraising. She had to do it. This sounds like a non-mea culpa, mea culpa.
Well, maybe she's just trying to run interference on the fact that she was BSing other people to donate, and when it all blew up, they blamed her.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that she's a big part of the fundraising, and she's basically trying to get away with, you guys tricked me. No. As close to the fire as she was, she knew the truth the whole time. There's no way she didn't. You know why? Because it would be an important tool in fundraising to know the truth.
Yeah.
So that you can head it off. There's a saying. Don't lie to your lawyer. It's a very complicated situation. Tell your lawyer the truth. Lie to your children. Don't lie to your lawyer. You're gonna have that, because you're gonna have to head that off at the pass at every turn when you're fundraising, when you're dipping into people's pockets and they're turning to you going, hey, something's wrong. You better have a convincing answer. She was part of it.
Yeah, I tend to think that's what happened in the Lindy Lee case, is she's just trying to retain her credibility.
Right.
and by stating it, because for her to say she was gaslighted and she was a major fundraiser, raising millions upon millions of dollars for Biden, and never decided to actually look at the regular news or any press conference to see clearly his cognitive abilities had massively declined from a period of 10 years ago, was her, I think, just that's a big CYA.
Yeah, trying to say, I had no part in this, I was tricked.
Right. I don't buy it.
No.
Don't buy it at all.
No. In fact, she was way too close to the fire to not know the truth. That everybody at the DNC, including her, they knew full well. Because you can't build a facade without knowing the truth. You can't, like as with the lawyer, you can't build a defense without knowing what actually happened. You can't build your defense here without knowing the truth. And that's what she had to do for a while. And now she's trying to say others tricked her.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't
know. Not buying that. No.
Well, the idiotic thing is you can go back, forget about the 2024 election. You can go back to 2020. I remember you and I talking about this. It was either April or May of 2020 that Biden's going into the basement. They know he doesn't have the ability to actually have a coherent conversation with reporters, so they're putting him in the basement. They figure Trump will destroy himself. Just put Joe in the basement so he won't destroy his campaign, and they ran it that way. And you're telling me she was all oblivious to what was going on at that starting point? And then 4 years of him being in office, and she had no idea until a month or two before the election that maybe it was, in July of last year, that she didn't know to a few more months before the election that Biden had cognitive problems? Give me a break.
Well, it's why the world had to make, it's part of why the world had to make more of COVID than what it was. You gave the perfect cover for them to put Biden in the basement. Changing the American, even by other nation standards, because remember, we live in a very liberal world. Making it something, and putting panic in everybody's minds over and over again to change the election in the United States and defeat Donald Trump was everything. So you pump that up, and the DNC certainly. Remember the reporters who had one chair inside of a circle? This was outside. Outside.
Do you remember I remember the circle. Do you remember when Biden was on the stage and people were in their cars to see him? Remember that?
Remember when he was online with other leaders from other nations wearing a mask?
Yeah.
For a Zoom call.
And people were beeping their horns.
Yeah. Instead of applauding. Yeah.
And there were only about 50 cars there. I mean, It wasn't like there were
and it was weird because
cars.
None of it sounded like approval. It sounded like they were getting mad at you for wanting to merge.
It wasn't a beep, 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 beep.
No.
It was,
Yeah. My gosh. The road rage right there at the rally.
When you think of the idiocy, now we talked about it at the time. The one I love is when they look back, because I had seen a report on it the other day about this, and they show the picture of this guy. This is on the California coast. He's out there surfing alone. Like the Coast Guard went out and got him and then fined him because he was out during COVID. And he's out.
It was
surfing.
Like the end scene of the final scene of Point Break. Remember when they're waiting to put him in handcuffs? Sorry, Johnny. Got to go hit this wave.
But he was out there alone.
Yeah, I know.
Like, sorry, no surfing. You can't do this because of COVID.
You could give it. Remember when the media said you could give it to deer, and the deer could spread it. Yeah, and so could the dire wolf. You know, the one that doesn't exist.
The dire wolf. Don't give COVID to the dire wolf.
Don't give COVID to the dire. That's why they went extinct. COVID from millions of years ago killed off the dire wolf. Stay in your homes. Protect the dire wolf.
Don't end up like the dire wolf, who has not been resurrected and who is still extinct.
That's right.
So stop it.
Stop it.
In case you just tuned in right now and you thought that the dire wolf had been genetically re-engineered, that was a false story.
If you're heading into office and that's your number one water cooler topic, you can't wait to talk to other fans of Game of Thrones inside the office, it's over. You can't do that either. The story's going to be extinct. Yeah. It's, you know, we saw this on the Biden thing. We've seen this from how many people? Even Joe, F you if you can't handle the truth, Scarborough. Well, I guess I didn't see it. Remember when the former CIA director Brennan, on the whole thing, after he was in the CIA, I think he was on CNN, he goes, well, I guess my sources were wrong.
Yeah.
He'd been saying something, I forget what the narrative was. I guess my sources. You're former CIA director. You're the source of all sources. And your sources are the best sources. Well, I guess they were wrong.
And you don't have
bad.
And you don't have to ever reveal your sources.
Exactly. It's the whole point.
Oh my God.
This is the world we live in.
I know.
It is the world we live in. Well, nobody can tell the truth.
How many of them, whether it's Jake Tapper, whether it's Lindy Lee,
mm-hmm.
whether it's Morning Joe,
mm-hmm.
they're all plain stupid.
Right.
Like we had as if that's a defense that anybody will buy. We had no idea. We were gaslighted. They kept Biden's condition from us. We had no idea. We didn't get to see him, so we didn't know. Hey, I never got to meet him, and I knew it.
Well, they're all going, hey, you guys tricked me. You look like the biggest idiot. Just come out and say, look, we're trying to win an election, so.
And we lied to you.
We lied to you.
Yeah, it's that simple.
Yeah.
No big deal.
It didn't work. You know.
Everybody lies.
Right.
It's okay.
Right.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Why? Because our show ends in an hour. And when our show ends, we record everything during the 5 hours, and then that becomes our podcast that you can listen to on our Red Eye Radio app. And if you cannot listen to one of our great radio stations overnight for some reason, we stream all 5 hours live on the Red Eye Radio app. We are everywhere. And from what we know, tariffs have not affected the price of the Red Eye Radio app at all.
No, they have not.
Because even if there was a 100% tariff on the Red Eye Radio app, 0 times 100 is still 0.
Yes, it is. We have calculators that told us that.
Yeah, and we did the math correctly.
Yes. We did. We don't always do that, but on this we did.
Yeah.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.